So obviously we've got Ben Schwerin here and Kevin Charnett, Live Nation and Snapchat. We've got a really interesting opportunity here to dive into their unique relationship. I think this is one of the only panels we have today where we've got platform and content partner working together. So it's going to be great to understand, how you guys operate as a unit together, but also how you're building a business together. So maybe we can dive in a little bit and talk about how you kind of became partners, and then what your process is.
Sure. So very early on, we saw that our users were creating a lot of content. 2/3 of our daily users create content every day. And part of that was going to events like concerts, like festivals, like sporting events, and sharing moments with their friends, taking snaps, putting them in their stories, sending them to their friends. And we thought, what if we could create a shared narrative? So what if we could enable our users to not only share with their friends, but share with the world? Mm-hmm. And the first time we tried this was EDC Vegas, June 14.
Okay.
We didn't tell anyone we were doing it. There was no messaging that said, hey, submit to this live story. It just was an option that popped up. And we were, I think, all amazed at how much great content we got. Mm-hmm. And when we were watching the story, we felt like, wow, we're really onto something. This let someone who wasn't at the event experience what it was like to be there. And I think we've just grown it from there. And this year, we've done 18 events together. We've had 48 million unique viewers.
48 million viewers?
48 million viewers who have consumed over 1 million hours of content.
Wow.
So
it's impressive. No, Kevin, obviously Live Nation covering a ton of events. The relationship with Snapchat is unique and special. Can you expand a little bit on how it fits into your overall programming slate? Because you're on a lot of different platforms, so it'd be great to understand a bit about how you're leveraging this unique platform. And it's different than live streaming video, right? Live stories is a little different. So, maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing on the various platforms and how it all fits in a holistic play.
Yeah, look, live streaming is a huge part of our business, and bringing the actual performance in full, beautiful HD quality is an amazing, important piece of the puzzle, and we stream agnostically across all platforms, Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube, et cetera, and on our own platforms. What's unique about the Snapchat opportunity is that we think it's the best way to get the vibe of what's going on. Yeah. Different than seeing the performances, which is a different experience, but there's no better way, the second we saw the test, that you could really dive right in and get the feeling and vibe and really understand what's going on at the venue. And I think the best thing we've seen is just the engagement levels are ridiculous. I mean, we in general have over 85% of people are doing something and sharing something, but mm-hmm. most of them are doing it through Snapchat. So it's pretty natural and obvious for us. And look, we also love the opportunity of taking the festival sponsors and offering them not just the opportunity to have an experiential execution on the ground to reach 100,000 people, but we can reach millions more globally and extend that reach. So it's to be honest, it's just been an unbelievable natural fit for us. And as Snapchat has grown, so has our partnership, and that includes globally.
That's great. So in a typical event, let's say, you're saying you got 100,000 people there, producing a live story, because it's not just a live stream of the stage, right? You guys are going deep into by the people, for the people, as well as producing some great content. Maybe talk a little bit about that process, because that's really interesting, especially for a lot of the producers that are out here and looking at how you create content, specifically before this platform, Snapchat and Snap Inc., right? Can you talk about how the team is on the ground and how you guys are working together collaboratively? Because I think that's unique and interesting, and you're bringing user-generated as well as produced. So,
yeah. So overall, we've had over 1.5 million submissions at Live Nation events, which is incredible. I think we're really happy with that number. It just speaks to the level of engagement that Kevin mentioned. And I think it's also important to think of this as an experiential product that's complementary to a live stream. So very few people, or proportionally small amount of people, get to actually go to these events, right? And this is what we think is the next best thing to attending the event, is watching the live story. And a lot of the feedback we get, which is great to see, is people will say, hey, I saw the live story on Snapchat. This is now on my bucket list to go to this event next year. So we really want to encourage people going to live events. I think there's a lot of value for people in experiencing events in person. We want to encourage that. And in terms of working together, it's really a collaborative effort. So obviously the majority of content is being submitted from fans. But these stories are about not just the fans' perspective, but the backstage perspective as well. So we're lucky to have a lot of artists who are really engaged on the platform, very supportive. And so we have a team that works with artists to help them submit content, and seeing those moments from an artist before they go on stage, sometimes on the stage after a performance, are really powerful. And you know, I think EDC was a great example of that. DJs were some of our early adopters.
Yeah.
People like Calvin Harris, Tiesto, Skrillex, and seeing their perspective on a show, I think it really adds to that overall feel of not just seeing it from one perspective, but seeing it from many.
Right.
And look, a big part of our partnership, of course, is providing that access. So, of course, the fans are creating most of the content, but you know, we're able to get people in certain places where a fan normally wouldn't have the opportunity to be backstage. And some of those moments are, quite frankly, some of the best moments that we capture, period, from any of the live events that we're producing.
That's cool. So
I just want to add that,
go for it.
we did a story for a One Direction show. It was one of the last shows on their tour. And Harry Styles, my favorite band.
Totally.
I actually am a fan. But Harry Styles watched the live story after the fact, and he said, "Wow, now I finally know what it's like to go to one of my shows." And that was, I think,
powerful.
That's very powerful.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, one thing about that, though, is that story is gone in 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
So, as a fan who might have missed it, you know, that sense of immediacy and urgency, and getting there while it's happening or within that window, how has that helped flow I guess you can say, the audience is coming to your platform onto some of the other things that Kevin might be trying to achieve with growing his audience and viewership? I know that obviously once it disappears from the platform, how can you keep on feeding the beast is always one of those things that people are looking to do. Can you talk a little bit about how that's, you know, shaping this live series is shaping some of the production you're doing on your side?
Yeah, well, look, we, in general, why we're all here, right, it's all about that live moment. We have, as Live Nation, putting on more than 25,000 events a year. We talk about our 2 hours of magic, right? That's the live moment. It's happening right now, and some of the behaviors that we've seen over the years is that fans are more interested in the what's happening at this very second than anything else. So that part of it, to us, is the magic that ends up happening, and we kind of love that it disappears. We love that live disappears, to be honest with you. And we have created urgency, and thanks to Snapchat and other things that we're doing, we're training the fan to pay attention. And you know, we're getting smarter in marketing. We're getting smarter to letting people know about it. But the organic reach that we end up with Snapchat, especially globally, I mean, some of the festivals that we end up streaming, I'm fairly certain in other parts of the world they've never even heard of these festivals yet. You know, we're getting you know, millions of people to view these stories, so it's starting to grow in terms of interest to finding other things, and I think that's one of the best things, frankly, that Snapchat's done, and learning from the fans and learning from the users and then growing the content from there.
Oh, that's great. You know, another interesting thing about this is how that platform is helping to age down the viewership and the exposure that your artists are getting. So obviously, as you're live on Facebook Live and Twitter and YouTube and others, Snapchat is a much different demographic and age group. Are you seeing from the research and insights that it's having an impact on who's attending some of these events at all?
I don't know that it's affecting who's attending, but you're right. I mean, we actually look at all the platforms completely different, and you know, nothing that we're doing right now touches that, you know, millennial audience stronger, obviously, than Snapchat. Look, every platform has a different audience. Every artist has a different audience. Every festival has a different culture and fan-following audience. And so it's just important that we kind of leverage all these. But to be honest with you, we learn every single day. We learn more from every festival we do. We like to curate things when we can and just, you know, learn and grow and change. And we've been fortunate enough to be you know, an early partner with Snapchat, and they've always come to us for new ideas and things that we could try to make things better, because we're certainly expecting and hoping this thing to continue growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so In terms of our demographics, 60% of US smartphone users 13 to 34 are Snapchatters, right? So these are people who are consuming content and then we think are likely to either buy tickets themselves or say to their parents, hey, can you buy me tickets to the show? So I do think that we can help partners like Live Nation there in terms of developing the next generation of fans. Fans that will go watch a live stream, fans that will buy tickets to a show, fans that will buy merchandise. So we really care about helping our partners. We like to think of our relationships as win-win-win. So a win for our partner, a win for us, a win for our users.
Yeah. No, that's great. You know, one of the anecdotes from backstage when we were quickly talking was how you're leveraging the Snap platform to drive to the live stream. Can we talk a little bit about that execution? Because I think that's really interesting. Not a lot of people are thinking about how to cross-promote and funnel people into an experience. And obviously with live stories being unique, there is the live streaming aspect of your concerts. So maybe talk a little bit about how you are programming on the different platforms, but then how you're helping to cross-promote them.
Yeah,
as well.
so I mean, we have, a good example of this is when we streamed EDC on Yahoo last year. And so what it allowed us to do, and it was a great marketing effort the first time we did this, so obviously if you're interested in the live story, you might be interested in watching the actual performances that were going on. So Yahoo was not just the hosting the stream, but also the advertiser in the Snap stories. So look, we love every time, obviously, in our world when we could extend that. And again, as I mentioned before, you take the sponsor who's on the ground, extend it through Snapchat, extend it through streaming. I mean, we start to get into an entire ecosystem, and to your point, potentially reaching different demographics on different platforms. And that's pretty exciting for our
really
business.
exciting, yeah. And from your side, Ben, what types of audience insights are you getting from people engaging in the live stories, and then how are you feeding that back to Kevin and his team and programming? Does that happen?
So we're providing a lot of insights. We provide demographics, time spent, engagement in terms of submissions. I think they're seeing a lot of data about who these users are and how they compare to other platforms. And on the ad side, Yahoo is obviously, we were really happy with that. I think it was a great activation. We've also had run ads from companies like Budweiser, Toyota, Chevrolet, Fox, Universal. And I think we see a great response to our video ad product called Snap Ads. And I think they especially fit well into Live Nation stories because it enables us to work together, our sales team and Live Nations. And what we tend to do is first we go to sponsors who are already activating on the ground. So it's a way for them to extend their partnership, its incremental reach. And I think that that's important for a brand who's affiliated with a sponsor to also be affiliated with the live story. And when you actually look at the ads and the stories, one of the numbers that we like to talk about is more than 2/3 of ads are viewed on Snapchat with the sound on. And that's that's
really good.
That's really important in terms of just a viewability metric and thinking about how effective an ad's going to be. 2/3 of the ads on Snapchat, more than 2/3, are viewed with the sound on. And obviously, when people are watching Live Nation live stories, they're going to want to watch those with the sound on. So we think that it's a good fit for advertisers.
We also love, of course, we can see what countries everybody's coming from. So one of the great success stories we have this year is also taking different advertisers in different markets for the same content. And so that's pretty exciting for our business too. We had a live story for our wireless festival in the UK, and Chevrolet was a sponsor here in the US, and then we had a separate sponsor that came from the festival itself in the UK. So, the more times that we can do that, it's obviously
go global and
great for the business.
Yeah, I'm glad that we brought up this subject now because monetization has been a hot button for this space. It's nascent, it's new, but it's also not really new. I mean, live has been around since radio, since television. But Kevin, for you, how much of a business do you think this can be, sponsoring all the various streams and live stories, and is this going to be a meaningful impact to your bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty good army working on that on a regular basis right now. And we believe, on any given night, Live Nation's producing 70 concerts around the world. So, we have at one time. So we have no shortage of content. So we're working towards the world where we can stream as many of those as possible and on as many platforms as possible. And again, our focus is on live. So then you start working with time zones and things of that nature that start to affect experiencing that live in different places. So we're super excited. And look, it's been a blessing that there's the Snapchats of the world and Facebook Live technology and Twitter Live and things that certainly we didn't create, but we have the opportunity to take advantage of. And you know, it's a pretty important part of the mission.
So as part of your executions, are you working closely with the agencies, or mostly is it brand direct when you're doing these executions?
I'd say most of our advertisers are a little bit of both, because a lot of them are strategic partners to the festivals, so we have very direct relationships. I'd say most of them actually are both, but ultimately, you know, a lot of it's digital media. And ultimately, the buy generally comes through the ad agency.
Okay. Now, are you getting then on any brands that are actually being really creative on the ground at the executions, working in conjunction with your team to do any cool 3V stuff?
So actually, the 3V snap ads, as they're called, they're pre-produced, so they're not shot on the ground.
Okay.
So there's a real distinction between the creative of the story and what a snap ad looks like, and that's by design. We don't encourage brands to try to be people; they're brands, right? So when you're watching a live story, it's very clear that you're watching user-generated content, whether it's from artists or users on the ground. And then when you see an ad unit, and there's up to 3 in a live story, that looks very much like a television ad. It's very polished. It's full screen vertical video, up to 10 seconds. And sometimes, and I think some of the best ads, frankly, are contextually relevant, right? So they fit. They fit within the live story, and I think that's a less jarring experience when brands are able to do that. And then just back to Kevin's point, I think one of the reasons why Snapchat and Live Nation are a good fit is global reach, right? Live Nation has a global footprint. So do we. We have more than 150 million daily active users. More than half of those are outside the US.
Yeah.
And we ran stories from festivals in 6 countries. And I think that number will continue to grow as we move into next year.
Yeah, and look, to answer your question, you know, we have 80 festivals we own and operator plus around the world, so we'll eventually get there.
Now, I mean, this is an odd question that maybe only I really care about, but how are you guys dealing with music rights issues when you're trying to go global with the music space? Because obviously, you know, I've seen streams get shut down pretty quickly because they didn't follow protocol and get whitelisted. And is that how you guys are really tightly connected and making sure that's all covered off on? Or?
Well, this is an important distinction between what we do and what a live stream is, right? So we are aggregating user-generated content. The clips are no more than 10 seconds long.
Right.
The focus of
But that's longer than a sample beat, which is 8 seconds.
Well, so the focus of these stories is the user experience.
Yeah.
It's not the music. So you're not going to go to a Snapchat live story to see a full song, for example. And essentially Snapchat is covering these events from a news perspective.
Okay.
We have a team of editors and producers who are going through all of the snaps, and I know that people are interested in how these stories get made. Well, you know, all these snaps, when they're submitted, come in, and we have a team of people who, in real time, are going through selecting snaps and then creating this narrative. And out of thousands, tens of thousands sometimes of snaps, they'll ultimately pick 30 to 50 that end up in the live story. So music rights, while it's an issue for streaming, it's not an issue that we deal with.
Right. So Kevin, you do that dance that you do?
Yeah, look, for Snapchat, it's a non-issue.
Non-issue, yeah. But on the other platforms, it is something that you're...
Yeah, look, we're getting certainly permission to do everything we're doing.
Yeah.
But again, our big focus is on the live experience and less so on demand and making it available later, which is, you know, requires a whole other set of rules and rights.
Right. So with your team that's curating all of this, how many of them actually travel around to all these events versus are at home base curating the content?
So from time to time, we'll send a correspondent to an event to contribute snaps or just sort of help facilitate work with troubleshooting with the partner like Live Nation. Ultimately, there's a couple of people assigned to each event who are working on pre-production and then actually curating the story. So while sometimes we will send people to events, oftentimes we have enough content from fans that we don't have to. And I think we're fortunate to have that, and also fortunate to have partners like Live Nation who are doing a great job themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, from producing events, have people on the ground at every single event, so they're also contributing as much as possible to.
Yeah, so it'd be great to talk a little bit about, Ben, the verticals that you're getting into with live stories. And obviously music is a powerful one, and I'd love to hear some of the statistics on how many people are actually watching a typical event, because when we put that into context to watching television or watching on other platforms, it'd be great to understand like what's working on the platform for live stories. Obviously, it's working with Live Nation, but what else is working? I mean, I read a great article about some of the news stuff that you're doing on the ground in Iraq and things like that. Would love to hear a little bit more about how you're approaching the market there.
Sure. So broadly, 10 to 20 million people watch live stories every day on Snapchat. So
it's a broadcast medium.
It's a good audience.
Yeah.
You know, when we think about live stories, obviously we want to share compelling stories with our users, and a lot of those are geographically relevant, right? So we do a lot of college football live stories, a lot of NFL live stories, NBA. Award shows, the Oscars, the Grammys, the Golden Globes. But then also we look internationally and we say, well, what's interesting to our users around the world, right? So if you're in the Middle East or if you're in Brazil or if you're in Europe, you're going to see different live stories based on where you are, and that's really important. We think that geographic relevance is important. But broadly, you know, we're really happy with performance, and if I think the way we look at it is if there's a big, compelling event happening around the world,
You're going to be there.
we want to be there. We want to allow our users who are there to submit content to a story, and we want to provide that experience to our users. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, I mean, from these types of executions, are you guys taking any cues from how they're doing storytelling and thinking about how you could do storytelling a little bit differently other than just the event itself? Because we know you got the event itself, tons of people show up to it, but is there any content you want to pre-produce that can lead into it, or coming out of it, how do you do a post, you know, follow-up linear type
Yeah,
of
look, we're
execution?
constantly talking about different things that we can do. You know, every time that we're executing something, and even stuff that's not ours, to be honest with you, we love every time they have a successful execution that's even not ours, because that's continuing the growth, it's creating this amazing behavior, and advertisers are becoming more and more used to it. I mean, we, in the first couple of years, quite frankly, we were onboarding advertisers who never have advertised on the medium before. So
Really? So you were actually bringing on new advertisers for Snap.
Definitely.
great.
So together, frankly, the success of Snap is as important to us
your
as
success
any of the
too.
other.
Yeah.
So sure, we
Biotic,
watch. Are you kidding me? We watch every single thing that goes on the platform.
And I think our from a content perspective, our goal with Live Nation in particular is to capture the essence of that particular event, right? And I think when you look at being at Lollapalooza feels very different from being at Bonnaroo or ACL or Hard Summer or EDC. So that's what we're really trying to work together to capture that and make sure that each story feels unique.
Yeah, no, that's great and interesting. So with those unique stories, I know recently you guys announced sort of like your programmatic ad targeting capabilities. Are you executing those on these live, or are you going straight broadcast, mass reach with one advertiser in the kind of fold?
So it's a different strategy with live stories.
Yeah.
The way we approach live stories is that this is premium content, this is premium inventory, and brands will pay a premium for adjacency to that premium content.
Yeah.
So we'll be manually selling live stories for the foreseeable future, and that's how I think we work so well together. And brands, as I said, are excited not only to be affiliated with these stories, with this content, but it's a good way for them to extend their reach when they're already affiliated with the event. So when we are selling NFL or NBA, the first brands that we're calling are the biggest sponsors of the NFL and NBA.
Budweiser.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Do you see that as an opportunity to get into, as I think maybe more agencies start adopting this audience segmentation and targeting wave that's happening, you know, addressable? Do you see that as an opportunity for you guys moving into next year and the years after?
So when you think about our ad business, I think it's important to think about it holistically. So you think of a strategy that includes a lot of our products together. So I think an example of that would be a buy in a live story, which is sort of the premium element of that, and then maybe there's another bucket, which is the more programmatic targeted buy, which would run within user stories.
Yeah.
And then there's the unlockables, which is our name for filters and lenses. So there's an opportunity, and we think what's most effective is when brands think about it that way. And if you're a movie studio, for example, maybe you have a lens the week the movie's coming out, and you're complementing that with ads that are Snap ads that are running on live stories and user stories.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So Kevin, from the kind of the filters and the unlockables side, are you guys doing a lot of those executions for the events themselves, or is it pretty much brand driven?
Yeah, look, we both. Look,
Yeah.
we obviously love having any time that the brand that's front and center on all these stories is the name of the festival. It's not a Live Nation brand necessarily, so it's Lollapalooza, right?
Yep.
It's ACL. So anything we can do to promote that. Look, the filters are a real part of Snapchat users. I mean, it's part of the behavior.
Yeah.
So. Sure, of course. Every time we could take advantage of that, I mean, I think that's really interesting. I think it's very interesting for the advertisers because that's a whole other level of engagement that is tough to achieve through most mediums. Yeah, look, we love any part of that, and we're still think about a lot of different things that we can do in that regard.
Now, obviously,
Just to add to that,
Okay.
because I do think it's an important part of these activations because one of the cool things about these stories is that you go to Lollapalooza and you have a Lollapalooza filter, right? People love sharing with their friends and saying, hey, look, I'm here.
right.
In terms of brands, what we're really focused on is allowing brands who are already buying video in these stories to then buy filters at the event. So you may see a branded filter, but the idea is that would align with the brand that has bought video. So again, it sort of ties into that holistic strategy that I mentioned.
Got it. Makes sense. One of the new elements that's going to be coming into the fold, obviously, is going to be spectacles.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that, and are you guys exploring how you can execute with spectacles at some of the Live Nation events?
So look, it's early days. Obviously,
Yep.
the product hasn't been released yet. We're excited about it. I think what it will allow users to do, hopefully, is just make memories in a new way, right? It enables you to capture content hands-free. So, yes, if you're at a concert or you're at a festival and you don't have to have a wall in front of your face, I think that could be really interesting for people. And we are, I think, approaching this organically, and we're excited to see when people do have specs and they do wear them to events like Live Nation festivals. We're excited to see what kind of content that they create. But sure, I mean, just if you just use your imagination and you think about a performer, for example, on stage wearing specs and allowing them to capture their perspective and it's whether it's their followers or the people watching the live story, if they're able to see the show from the artist's perspective, literally through their eyes, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely begs the VR, AR type of treatment as well. And for Live Nation, Kevin, have you started experimenting with some AR and VR executions and 360 video? Because specs obviously can help really produce that type of a point of view.
Yeah. So yeah, look, VR is very important to us. We have a couple partnerships that we have announced with Hulu, creating a VR series on the platform. We have a partnership with a company called NextVR for live VR. Again, you'll continue to hear me focus on the live piece.
Yep.
They can't make the spectacles fast enough from our perspective.
I'm waiting
it's
for
going
my
to be
pick.
absolutely amazing for our business. Yeah, so look, we think that is important. It's early days, obviously, for that as well. And obviously, all this is coming together. But, for Live Nation and our business, obviously, that experience, to experience it in a different way, certainly through VR, which we're already producing, it's pretty amazing. I mean, again, it's about taking fans to places that they can't go. But again, I feel like every single medium has a different experience for a different fan in a different place and a different kind of fulfillment for what each fan's trying to discover. We'll continue growing and I'm sure the platform will evolve over the years. So who knows what we'll be producing together.
Since you've been in the space, the live streaming video space, not the live story space, but the overall live streaming video space for quite a while, early pioneer, do you have any kind of tips or insights that you can share with the room here on, things you learned along the way, things to watch out for, and how to stay authentic when you're doing this experience? Yeah,
I mean, look, the exciting part of the live streaming part of the business is that, and doing things agnostically and allowing the artist to put it on their platforms is really our best learnings, quite frankly. I mean, that's the best marketing partnership we can ask for, right? And it's a nice conversation to have with an artist to say, hey, we'll pay for this, we're doing this, this will be great, you can share this with your fans, and it's, again, no different on Snapchat either, but I think that's a huge learning for us. It's obviously our best marketing no matter what we do, when the artist is engaged and involved and reaching out to their fan base. That's pretty much the biggest things, and then I guess the other things, and we're still learning every day, especially on these, Facebook Live and some of these other platforms. What's interesting is that some of the content, we're all about the live in those 2 hours, if you will, or those 6-7 hours of the festival, but literally if we can get any type of on-demand content, a message, a shout-out from the artist or anything like that, and again, we do that on Snap, sometimes that gets as much views if we do that a week in advance, leading up to the streams.
Right.
So we're learning every day. I think the biggest thing is that the artist is a really super valuable piece of the puzzle, and we're able to empower the artist to take advantage of what we're building and producing for them.
Cool. And Ben, from your side, it's the same type of question, but I mean, it takes weeks of prep, right, in order to get ready for some of these events and research and. Any tips for people that are wanting to get included in live stories? Like, are there any things that your teams look for, to start grabbing and pulling, or is it just completely random?
Sure. Well, I would say that for the average fan, obviously it's a bit aspirational, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of content that's submitted, and very few snaps are actually selected for the live story. But
how many total do you think in about a typical
generally
story?
30 to 50,
Okay.
but out of tens of thousands. So I think what our editors really look for are unique perspectives.
Right.
Right. So the snap of you eating a hot dog is probably not going to make it unless it's a very impressive. I don't know.
Unless I'm Conan O'Brien and a hot dog.
Yeah. No, I think so. We're really looking for, like I said, something that's unique and stands out.
Right.
And really captures the emotion of the moment. I think that's important too. And look, obviously access is interesting, right? So if you're on the side of the stage and you're snapping, or if you're in the front row and you're snapping, and there's a great moment, that's likely to get in. And I think from an artist perspective, this just goes back to how far we've come, I think, as partners in the last 2 years, because when we started these, there weren't a lot of artists participating in the stories, and from a production standpoint, we didn't have filters that had the set list on them, or had the facts and figures about the festival, and sort of educated our users at the same time. You mentioned the news stories that we do. And what's interesting about those is we thought we had an opportunity not only to educate our users about the political process in the election, but also